Nurture Talent Academy has conducted over 190 workshops since the starting in 2010 and trained more than 10,000 entrepreneurs across 68 cities in India. And with all your support, we are happy to bring together this platform of webinars on entrepreneurship. Our aim is to generate 20,000 jobs and 1,000 ventures should start in the next 3 to 5 years. I am happy to share that this webinar is being conducted by Mr. Sid Shah, our expert for the day. Sid is a person of insightful experience, having worked across the globe. He has got international experience in the US. He came to India, started his venture, Wild East Group, which exclusively handles the brand of various personalities and corporates, including Hrithik Roshan, Shiv Khera, and others. Today's session will be a 1-hour session, and in the middle we will have a quick break after 15 minutes of starting to check for any questions from the audience members. If you can see just next to your name there is a hand icon. If you want to ask any question to myself or Sid Shah, who is our expert for the day, you can ask that question. You can request for unmute. Otherwise, you can type down your question in the questions window and we will be happy to take up your issues, questions, queries. This is an interactive session. Mr. Sid will be happy to share his experiences as an entrepreneur, as a marketer, as an expert in the area of brand management. Over to you, Sid. We are very happy to welcome you from the family of Nurture Talent Academy and our audience members. Thanks a lot for joining us. Please take over the session.
Thank you, Amit. Thank you, Amit. I really appreciate you inviting me here, and I want to thank you for what you're doing. You have, developed an amazing platform that has educated so many people and very lofty goals, and it's something that we need in India. And so, thank you for that. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here. Hi, everybody. I hope you guys can hear me okay. My name is Sid Shah. Thank you for listening to me. I'm going to be really speaking about a few topics today. I'm going to be talking, I want to give you a little background about me, just so you know I have some credibility when I'm speaking about, branding for entrepreneurs. I want to talk to you, the context of this presentation is really, if you're an entrepreneur, what are the things that you need to think about as you develop your brand? Now that could mean a lot of different things. That could mean how do you develop the brand of your company? If you're developing apps, how do you develop the brand of your apps? If you want to brand yourself, how do you develop your personal brand? All those kinds of things will be encompassed in kind of these few things I'm talking about. So I'm going to really be talking about developing a brand, the components of that brand, bringing that brand experience to life, and then developing the brand architecture. I think, I like to have presentation that really are more interactive. So this is probably going to run about 15 or 20 minutes, and then I'm going to open it up. And I'd like to really get involved and answer any specific questions you might have. And remember, in this game, there's no such thing as a dumb question. So please ask me anything you want, and let's think through it, and let's figure out the answer to it. So very briefly about me, I'm president of a company called the Wild East Group. We exclusively develop new business opportunities for Hrithik Roshan, Yash Raj Films, the Calcutta Knight Riders, Deepak Chopra, Jay Sean, Bruce Lee, Dr. Seuss, and pretty much most of the Hollywood talent in India. I started this company about 2 years ago, very similar, around the same time that Amit started the Nurture Talent Academy. Previous to that, I was a director in a company called Brand Sense Partners, where we worked on deals for Britney Spears, Halle Berry, Clorox, Dodge, and a lot of the global brands that are prevalent today. I did my MBA from Kellogg, and before that I was a management consultant in strategy and ops at PwC and Deloitte Consulting for about 7 years. So I've kind of had experience across the corporate world, across the client world, a various amount of industries with a various amount of clients, and I think I have a pretty good perspective of what's important to develop a brand. So I'm going to get started now, just so we can start moving forward and you can start learning what this is all about. So very quickly, it's important to remember what a brand is. A brand is the essence that a product, service, or company will deliver or be experienced by a buyer. It's the amalgamation of all of those entities. So you could have the best designed product, you can have the best designed platform, you can have amazing customer service, but if nobody knows about you, it doesn't make a difference. You have to offer something to the market that they love and that they're going to talk about. So for most startups, the problem isn't that people have misconceptions about your brand. The problem is that they don't think about your brand at all. I see hundreds of e-commerce companies every day pop up, and when I go visit them, they look very interesting to me. They look like they have figured out the customer service. They look like they have figured out the product mix. They look like they have the design figured out. But I honestly have not heard about them anywhere. Nobody's talking about them. Nobody's speaking about them, right? That's the biggest problem. How do you get your brand out there so that people are talking about it? That's the most important thing. You can have, the best idea in the world. You can execute it to a T. But if nobody's talking about it, if nobody's using it, then it doesn't really matter at all, okay? So how do you start telling that story? Instead of doing the work of developing a brand name and visual system, start with the research, right? A lot of people, they wake up in the morning and they just come up with this amazing name for something, and they realize, oh my God, I'm going to start a company around that. Wrong. That's the wrong thing to do. The first thing you got to do is figure out what it is you want to do. What is the problem you're trying to solve? What is the gap you're trying to fill? And then you start with research. You have to think about where are all the places your brand is going to manifest itself. What is your potential customer going to see your brand? You need to start taking notes of these places, right? Take photos, take audio notes, clip articles, document partner sites. Look at the competition. Where are they? What are they saying, and who's listening to them? The more you understand all of this, the more you realize that you can have a clear story that's clearly differentiated in the marketplace. I don't think, and I keep on talking about e-commerce because I think it's a very saturated market in India right now. And, I don't see a lot of e-commerce companies that are popping up that have a very clearly differentiated story. Okay, so if they spent enough time before thinking about some of these things and really figuring out where they fit into the world, they might have a better story of how the consumer is going to accept them. Remember, consumers get hit with thousands of messages a day. And think about your average day. Text message, SMS, BBM, Twitter, Facebook, whatever, TV, newspaper. You are inundated by messages a day. And part of what's innate to you is subconsciously comparing, noting, analyzing, and judging. So why not make it easier for them to compute and absorb your message, okay? So you got to think about this, right? Remember, if your competition almost is like 1,000 messages a day. So if you're playing in that kind of space, you got to make sure that whatever message you send to people is very easy to absorb. It registers in their mind within a split of a second in their subconscious. That's the only way your brand is going to get recognized when you're competing against that kind of mind space. So once you clearly have your story or your value proposition, then you can start thinking about the name and the logo and the visual system used to communicate that message. And this should always come later, and it takes a lot of iterations. Don't just think that you have a name and it works because you like it. Remember, you're not the customer, okay? The name should have an easy connect and a very good story behind it that people can relate to. Don't just pick a color for your logos and your webpage because you like it or your mom likes it or your friends like it. You're not the customer. You got to think about what it is the product and what offering you're trying to give people and how those colors resonate to the consciousness of a buyer. So, very quickly when you're developing a brand, in summary, you have to get to a place where you realize the brand experience has to represent something bigger, something like your institutional philosophy or how you fit into the world. Branding does not have to be expensive. but it has to be consistent. It's important for entrepreneurs to spend the proper amount of time constructing these components and not leaving anything to chance. Because in this world of so many choices, that's what the consumer expects. Okay? So now, what I want to talk about is diving a little bit deeper. I gave you a little primer on kind of what a brand is, right? It's a product or service that is the amalgamation of product and service that consumer expects, right? So now, the easiest way is if you can just memorize this visual. This is going to help you figure out how to think about your brand. The first place I'm going to start is your brand mission. That should be the easiest and simplest functional statement of what you do. It's got to be totally unsexy. It could be something like, we build games. That's it. That's your mission. We build games. All right? Then, when you talk about your brand vision at the top box, that's when you start thinking about something a little bit loftier, right? Like if you think about what Bill Gates was talking about back in the late 80s, early 90s, was we want a PC in every single person's house. That's his vision statement, okay? So you can see there's a difference between the mission and the vision, okay? Then in the middle, you have something called your brand positioning. Okay, your brand position is a way to kind of, differentiate yourself in the market to a very targeted group of people. Okay, so for example, you could sell cars, right? Now your brand position could be, we sell luxury cars, right? So now suddenly you position yourself in the luxury market. You could even take that brand position even further and say, we sell luxury cars in Europe. Right? And suddenly now you have a very specific brand position. You are a luxury car maker in Europe. And it's very clear, and that's what you got to stick to. There might even be an opportunity in South America or something that something pops up, but you got to stick to your brand position. You got to know what you are about, and that's where that comes in. So that really plays in the middle of this mission and vision thing, as you can see. And then we have this thing called brand foundation. These are really foundational things that are going to kind of govern your company. You could think of something like, we are going to ensure that we don't use child labor, right? Or we're going to ensure that we are green. If you're a hospitality company, we're going to be green. If you're an airline company, we're going to make sure our carbon offsets, make up for all the money we spend on oil, right? These are foundational things that you're going to kind of follow as you execute on your brand vision. Okay? I hope that makes sense. What I want to do is kind of show you a live example of how a company did that, right? So if you look at BMW, for example, their brand mission is very clear. It's to deliver sheer driving pleasure via sporting and dynamic performance combined with a superb design and exclusive quality. So they want to give the best driving pleasure. They want to be sporty, and they want to give superb design and exclusive quality. That's it. That's their mission. It's simple, okay? Then their vision is to design automobiles that meet all the challenges posed by the future. It has to be efficient, intelligent, and connected, okay? So now they're talking about something really big, right? They're saying we want to design an automobile that is going to ensure that our daily life and routine is easy. It's going to be efficient, intelligent. We're going to be connected, okay? Then their brand position is we're going to be the ultimate driving machine. What does that mean? That means that they're going to have horsepower, they're going to look cool, you're going to be comfortable, you're going to have fun, you're going to have all of that wrapped into one thing. Right? Now, if you look at different cars, like if you look at the Tata Nano, their brand position is very simply we want to be in the cheapest, most affordable car for a certain segment of people in the country, right? So you can see that every single company has a very clear brand position, and you know how they fit in. The car companies do it excellent. BMW, Mercedes, Lexus, Range Rover, you really have an idea of what their mission is, what their vision is, and kind of how it all wraps together to give you that brand experience. Okay? So I hope that kind of helped you understand how you should think about your brand. Okay? So, let me just kind of give another example. if you're going to, I'm assuming if you're a young entrepreneur here in India, you're thinking mobile, you're thinking e-commerce, you potentially could be thinking green, agriculture, all these kind of new areas that, there's a big gap in the country for, right? So, back to building games, right? Your brand mission could be, we build apps, right? That's it. That's our mission. We build apps. Then your brand vision could be, we want to ensure that every single person in the world that uses our app enjoys spending, or who enjoys wasting time on their phone is using our app, right? So suddenly you have this lofty goal that you want every person who wastes time to waste time with you, okay? Then your brand position could be like, we are only going to be on Android phones, or we're only going to be on Micromax phones. So suddenly you very clearly carved out where you're going to play. And then your foundation could be something like, we only use IIT engineers, or we only build games and apps that have a socially relevant message, right? Or we're going to ensure that for every app you download, we donate 10 cents to something, right? So now you've literally developed your company, right, with these 4 pillars. So I want you to think about that as you go back and kind of draw up the plans of your business. How does whatever you're doing work in this very simple framework? So now that we understand the framework, right, now we understand like all the different components of a brand, I want to talk about how you bring that brand experience to life, okay?
Sid,
I'm going to
at
do it as
this time,
simple as possible, but yeah.
yes, Sid, at this
Sorry.
point of time, we'll take a quick
Yeah.
check from the audience side, and in the meanwhile, you can please play the first few slides till now, okay, so that those who have joined us late, they can go through the slides at least. Kriti Sudani has a question. Kriti, would you like to speak up your question?
Yeah.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing good. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you great. Go ahead.
Yeah. I had just some confusion on the brand foundation. If you could just explain that with some other example.
Sure. Good question. Look, when you think about a foundational, you're thinking about something that's very foundational to how you're going to run the company, right? It doesn't have to, let me put it this way. If the brand foundation wasn't there, your company would still, hello, can you guys hear me? Okay, sorry. Yeah, well, if the brand foundation wasn't there, your company would still be just fine, okay? The foundation is this added thing that is going to give your company a personality that nobody else has, right? So, for my company, for example, one of our foundational things is that, one Friday a month we are doing volunteer service, right? 10% of our profit after we meet all of our costs are going to a nonprofit organization, okay? So this is a very foundational thing for us. So we make sure that this is part of who we are. This is kind of part of our soul, if you may, right? Now, a hospitality company like Marriott might have a foundation saying something like, we're going to ensure that any new property we build is going to be green and meet green standards, okay? Again, this has nothing to do with mission. Their mission is probably, we build hotels all around the world. Their vision is probably something like, we want to ensure every business traveler in the world is staying at a Marriott hotel, right? But their foundation, again, is something that doesn't really have to do with anything. It's really more on how they're going to run the company as something that gives their company a little flavor, a little personality. Like, we're going to ensure that all of our hotels are green. We're going to ensure that, we're only in countries that have, democratic governments, right? So this is a foundational type of activity that the brand saying, this is going to be core to who we are. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, great. Nagraj has a question. Nagraj, I have unmuted
Sure.
you. Would you like to speak your question?
Yeah, good evening, Sid. Nagraj here.
Hi.
Yeah, I'm basically a corporate lawyer specializing in IP and, of course, brand management, which is an extension. I have one small question. I have one small question. See, the more relevance to brand is always associated with products or maybe some sort of a goods. See, how relevant is with regard to service? Because you also in a service oriented, I am also in a service oriented. Because most of the times we come across what you call extension. We need to keep adding what you call extension to our services.
Sure.
Because that's the way we can survive. How relevant was that? I mean, say with regard to service company brand.
It's such a good question that I'm going to talk about it on my next 2 slides.
Okay, sure. I think I was
you're way ahead of you're way ahead of me. You read my mind. That's a really good question. I'm going to talk about that. You know, that's called brand architecture. Okay.
Because as I told you, in fact, I also help a lot of startups to what you call get their brand protected through trademark registration, through trademark search, how to make your make your brand name. It should not be generic. I advise a lot of things. So I was just wondering, as a brand myself, rather as a brand my firm, how to protect that. I mean to say, not getting.
Sure, I understand what you're saying. I mean, you're in a service business that has multiple lines of business, right? And you want to figure out how you can clearly communicate that so it doesn't look like a big puzzle or mess, right?
Yeah, sure. Because we want to differentiate from other people.
Okay,
of course.
Great. So I think, Sid, we can move ahead with the next few slides, and once we come back after that, we'll address all these questions. Okay?
Yeah. And if I don't answer that question, please let me know, and I'll come back to that. Okay?
Okay. Yeah. Please move ahead.
Okay. Great. Okay. So we've talked about, you know, at a high level, we've talked about kind of the brand, right? The brand vision, the mission, all this. Again, we're still constructing brand. We're the tenets and the components around it. Now what I want to talk about is how do we bring that brand to life, right? How do we take all these ideas and make it a living, breathing entity, okay? So, you know, the best way to think about a brand is it's broken out into 3 parts: the words, the visuals, and the senses, right? So when I say words, I want you to think about all of the places words are used in your business. It might be on your web page, it might be on your product, it might be the content on your business card, it might be how you write an email, how you speak to a customer, or the words the CEO uses in the speech. All those things are verbal representations of your brand, okay? So this is really important. What I see a lot is and I analyze a lot of brands. When I see a lot of brands, you know, I see the words that they use on your web page, and then I go into their office and I see kind of what their office looks like, or what their employees look like, or what their business cards look like, and there's a huge disconnect, okay? So the words are not being spread across all of the different platforms. They're not manifesting itself across the brand all the way through, okay? That's really important, okay? So if you have a super cool design website, you better make sure your products are super cool, and you better make sure your business card is super cool, okay? If you give me a podunk business card that is wrinkled and stuff, I'm going to think about your business that way, right? So you need to make sure the verbal representation of your brand is consistent across everything, okay? But that's only part of it. Okay? Those words on your web page or your letterhead are typically wrapped in some type of artistry, right? And that's the visual component. Now, if you look at the pictures I have here, right? Look at the website for Apple. It's simple. It's clear, it's efficient, it's futuristic. Those are Apple's brand attributes. So they designed their product that way. Their website is defined that way. Even when Steve Jobs used to give speeches, it was very simple. It was just him and the product. Even when you go into a store, it's very simply designed. It's very efficient. It's very futuristic, right? So those verbal and visual components are manifested across everything they do. Okay, that brand consistency is everywhere, okay? Now some brands, depending on what you do, there might even be a sensory component, right? Specifically smell. You know, if you think of a spa or a coffee shop, you walk into a spa, you smell eucalyptus, you know, you hear the waterfall in the background, right? That's part of the sensory component of it, right? So every brand is partially the words that are used, partially the visual system, and partially the sensory wrapped together to create the brand experience, okay? So whether that experience is walking into a Costa Coffee, the signage, right, the way the products are named, the words that the customer staff uses when taking your order or when giving you your change, right? Think about it. Why do you pay 200 rupees for a latte instead of making it at home for pennies? It's because of the experience that Costum provides. A cool, clean environment, soothing music, intelligent atmosphere, fresh aromas, consistency across every single store. You know what you're going to get. You know the coffee is going to be a certain temperature. It's going to have a certain flavor. You know the sofa you sit on is going to be clean. The table is going to be clean. The menu is very clear. It all manifests itself into a great brand experience. So those things together are what create the experience. And that's just what you have to think about as what you're trying to construct. Are you only trying to demonstrate something? Then only use the visuals. Are you just trying to explain things better? Then focus on the words. But if you wrap them together, then you're creating a brand experience. Okay? So now, I want to get back to the question that the gentleman asked me. It's kind of like, I'm a service company and I have many services I offer. What do I do about that? Okay, so I'm going to give an example of Apple again because I think they do it the best, and then we can talk about specifically services. But when you think about brands, you think about, you hear a lot of different things. Now, taking that conversation a bit deeper, you may be in a situation where your company is a brand, but you offer a portfolio of products or services or sub-brands, if you will. You might actually name them. You might decide that you're one company like Apple, but that you make many things. More times than I like to think about, a sub-brand vis-a-vis a service or product is just added to the portfolio, and not enough thought is given to how it should fit in. It's extremely confusing to the consumer. You have to ask and seriously think about, now this is how you figure it out, okay, is what sort of relationship exists between the different products and services of the parent company, okay? The second thing you need to think about is what audiences are you trying to reach with the different brands or services, and how are you communicating with them, okay? So you could have a lot of different products and services that have different audiences. You need to make sure that you think about very clearly, if you're going to bring a new product or service into your portfolio, who's the audience and how are you going to communicate with them, and how is that going to relate to the overall architecture of what you created. The third thing you need to think about is how do these sub-brands or these portfolio of services relate and talk to each other, okay? And then at the end of the day, it all has to come back to the parent company, right? How and what should all of these sub-brands and portfolios say about your parent brand or your, kind of overall company? So I'll use Apple again because I think they do it best, but if you have Apple as a parent company, then you have the iPad, the iMac, the iPhone, and the iPod. And under each, you have different versions of each, right? So for the iPod, you have the Nano, the Touch, the Mini, and then under that, you have different versions and shapes. It's extremely clear to the consumer that there's a master brand called Apple and a sub-brand called iPhone, and there's different versions of the iPhone. That hierarchical relationship is actually a science, and it's called brand architecture. Believe me when I say this, Apple spent a lot of time on this architectural hierarchy. And to you and I, it's the simplest thing in the world to absorb. It's so simple. I mean, look at it. This is the company right here, and they're the #1 company in the world. They could very easily get into like B2B and servers and printers and like 100 different things. And suddenly, what do they become? They become Hewlett-Packard. And look at what a mess Hewlett-Packard is, right? They obviously just might have thought about something or saw something, they just launched into the market. They didn't think about how it fits into the overall portfolio. They didn't think about how it fits into the overall architecture, okay? That's a really important thing to think about. In my business, there's a lot of things I could be doing, okay? But the toughest thing for any entrepreneur or any businessman is to stay focused on one or two things, okay? The second you start saying, oh, I could do that, I could do that, I could do that, suddenly people are like, what do you do? What is it that you actually do now, right? So you need to be very clear about what it is you offer and who you offer it to and why, and make sure they understand that as well, okay? The brand architecture simplifies the related products and services so that consumers can build a relationship to multiple things at the same time. It's the mapping of what the brand's intentions are. It's how you're going to actually execute on your mission and your vision and your position, okay? The context that you provide makes it easier for people to find the right product. Now, this is important, okay? If you give people this context, if you just look at this architecture, it makes it easier for people to find the right product, then buy the right product because they know what the product is. Then, because you've thought about your architecture, they know to upgrade to the right product. And if done correctly, they'll advocate the product, okay? For example, I might say something like, I bought this particular iPod because it fit my active lifestyle, and I needed something light and nimble. But I'm always on the go, and I have my iPhone for communication, media, and information, and I have my iPad for presentations. Okay? So I very clearly understand what I'm using every product for and how it fits into my lifestyle, because Apple told me that. They've communicated that very clearly, very simply. But that thing required a lot of thought. So in summary, the structure or science is called brand architecture. It is the way you manage your portfolio of brand assets so that they feel related to one another, so that the consumer can easily absorb what you're trying to sell, and so that the consumer can make the best choice possible, and ultimately how the consumer can clearly internalize how they relate to your brand. Okay? So that's it. That's all I really wanted to speak to you about today. There's a lot more I can go into, but I really wanted to keep this at a very high level because I didn't want to hit you with the whole kind of, MBA brand class in one shot. I wanted you guys to soak this in, and if it makes sense, at midnight I can schedule something else down the road where we talk about some very specific parts, right? There's a lot of other things in branding, like just that, we can spend 30 minutes just on the logo design. We could spend another 30 minutes just on the naming. We could spend another 30 minutes on, the different phases of the brand platform, right? We can spend another 30 minutes on how do you brand yourself, okay? So I just wanted to give you this context now so we can start a conversation so you guys can go back, think about your brand, your company, and figure out how you're going to make it fit into this kind of structure so it's easy for somebody like me to absorb it, who has 1 second to absorb it, right? I want you guys to go back and do something like that. Then we can talk about how do we take that further. I hope this was helpful. Amit, if you like, we can open it up to more questions.
Sure, great, and they have been coming fast to us. So thanks a lot. And in the meanwhile, if you can play those slides again for our audience to get the hang of the flow of the program. And I request all our audience members, please raise your hand. That is an icon next to your name if you wish to speak to Sid for any questions regarding your marketing plans and brand architecture. And if you have not got the mic, then you can type down your questions on the questions window or the chat window. Only we are able to see the names of the speakers, so in case you wish to keep it hidden from other audience members, we don't have any concerns. Sumit has her question. Sumit says, Sid, how do you put things back once your brand has taken a hit and things get messed up for certain reasons? Do you have any quick tips and ideas on putting things back on track for the same business?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Okay, so there's a couple things here, right? If your brand took a hit because of customer service or defective products, or you didn't give money back in time, or whatever those like really kind of almost ethical issues are, right? You have to very quickly send an apology not only to that person but to the public, okay? Whether it's in a blog post, whether it's in a letter, something like that, saying, look, we admit we screwed up. This is why we screwed up, and this is what we're going to remedy. This is how we're going to remedy the situation, right? Then people know that you have taken responsibility for the mess up and you're trying to build their trust back. And you can even add something, say, because we messed up, for the next 2 months, we want to ensure that all our customers get, everything at cost, or 50% off, or 10% off, or whatever it is, so that you can really let them know that you care about their business. Okay, that's one way of looking at it, right? The second thing you can do is, if your brand took a hit, I'm not quite sure what it means because that can mean a lot of different things, but the most important thing to do is really think about, again, like, what is your brand about? What is made you start this brand? What made you start this company? What gave you that excitement, day one, that said, I'm gonna solve this problem, I'm gonna do this, right? And figure out how you got away from that, right? Figure out how you got away from that. There's a point A and there's a point B. You're at point B right now. What happened from A to B, and how do you get back to A, right? You need to think about that and figure out how to get back there. Did you offer way too many services to confuse the person? Did you, extend your brand so much that people don't even know what your brand is about anymore, right? If that's the case, then you start taking back things and go back to your core principles, your core brand mission, your core brand vision, your core brand position, right? you can do that, then people will realize, okay, these guys are serious. They care about us. They care about their brand, and they're taking the steps to make sure that their brand is going to get back on equal footing.
Okay, great. And in case any other audience members has a question, please you can quickly type it on the questions window, or you can raise your hand. That is an icon next to your name. Nagraj has a question again. Nagraj, I have unmuted you. You can speak your question.
Yeah, Sid, I have two questions. I'll keep it very simple. First question
Sure.
is adding to the previous question of brand hit. Say, for example, imagine somebody like, hello?
Yeah, I'm
please
listening.
go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, Tiger Woods, a famous golf player, because of his personal reasons, his brand got
Sure.
hit. How do you think you can fix? I know there are two brands. One is company brand, what is associated. Another is personal branding. That is the first
Yeah.
question. How do you fix? How can you fix a personal brand? Second thing
Sure.
is, second question I wanted to ask. I think I'll type it. It's a little big.
Okay, that's fine. With Tiger, that's a tough one, right? But the main thing is we got to remember why Tiger became famous, right? He became famous because he was the best golfer in the world, not because he was this African American, Chinese kid that was like a model citizen. It was because he was the best golfer in the world, and essentially all this kind of stuff happened to him, and to get back in people's good graces, the only thing he really needs to do is keep his private life private and focus back on his golf game. The second this guy's
I think that needs to be done by the media, I believe.
Yeah, well, the media is a tough thing. The media is a tough thing to work around, right? But if he just stays focused on his golf game and goes back number one, his sponsorship will come back. Everything will come back. I'm not sure how familiar you are with a basketball player in the U.S. His name's Kobe Bryant. He's probably the best basketball player in the NBA right now. He was charged with, unfortunately, he was charged with rape about 3 years ago. Okay, and he lost all his endorsements. Like everything was upside down. His wife divorced him. It was horrible, right? He went back to his core. Okay, he went back to his core, and he literally became the best basketball player in the NBA in the world. He's broken every record, right? And now, he can walk on water. Okay, it's because he went and he focused back on his core. It's not an easy thing to do. When the media is involved, it's not easy, but that's the one thing you can do that can almost help guarantee you on the path forward.
I think in India the most common thing what we can associate it with personal branding is our politicians.
Yeah. That's a whole exercise. They spend a lot of money on the PR agencies.
Yes, so I think Nagraj, in India too, there have been cases where sportsmen have lost their reputation for certain reasons. The cases of Mohammad Azharuddin, Manoj Prabhakar, Navjot Sidhu. Sidhu in fact was charged for murder. Okay, but having been successful in cricket, people forget certain things. There are certain image control and image management exercises. So there are a lot of incidences back home as well. In fact, Yuvraj Singh is the latest incident where he was his endorsement of Ranbaxy, the Revital, was taken away and put it to Salman Khan. So these things obviously have their own issues and conditions. So
because people might start thinking if they have Revital, they might get into cancer.
There are
can't help, because at the end of the day, brand has to do its damage control.
Yes. Okay, so I hope you got some inputs on the Tiger Woods related
Yeah,
issue.
definitely. It was nice talking to Sid.
And you can type down your question. That next question is. I will give a chance to Sagar. Sagar actually has got one, in fact, a couple of questions. He does not have a mic, so I will speak out his question. Sagar.
Okay.
So just to give you a background, Sagar is an image consultant and he is a keynote speaker. He does PR and image consulting for various corporates and individuals. He has got one question. If the multiple services which you offer come under the same category, okay, then what would be the best strategy to position the brand and convince the customer? He is in the services category. So if you want, I can repeat.
Okay.
If there are multiple services which come under the same category, then what is the best way to position it?
Well, okay, so without knowing too much of your business, you can think about it like, let's look at a company. I mean, this is not image consulting, but let's look at somebody like Accenture or Deloitte, right? And they do a lot of IT work, right? And so they have one category called IT, but within IT they have C++, they have Java, they have SAP, they have, Siebel, right? And all of those solve a different problem, right? So similarly, if you're an image consultant, you might have, one category that's called, public relations. And under public relations, you probably have damage control. You probably have something called brand building. You probably have something called, I don't even know what it's called, but let's just assume it's just those two services, right? How do you convince the customer? Remember, you got to think about it from the customer's perspective. Now, if these two services are similar in nature, where the customer asks you the question like, why would I pay extra for this, right? I mean, they're the same thing. I mean, that's a question you need to ask yourself, okay? So if you're having a problem delineating the two services from each other, whether it's a problem in-house where you guys can't figure out why there's two services, or it's a problem from the customer's perspective where they don't understand why you have two services, right? Then you need to think about, why do you have two services, right? Is it just so that you can increase your bill rate? Is it just so that you can offer another service because you saw somebody else do it? Really think about what the service is, what the value add is, and how it works independently of the other service, but they can work together at the same time.
Sure.
I hope that answered your question. If I knew more, I could probably go a little bit deeper, but I hope that helped a little bit.
Okay, I think he got the input that he was looking for. Another question that is there from Nora. Nora, I have unmuted you. If you would like to speak your question, please feel free. Yes, Nora Rivera, I have unmuted you. I think Nora has a question. I will type it down. I will speak it on his behalf. His score is solutions for housing problems. So this is just one line that he has given, solutions for housing problems. What could be the brand vision for Nora?
Okay, so, that looks like that could be your brand mission, is right. We provide solutions for your housing problems. I'm thinking that means like stuff like plumbing and air conditioning and fans and all the stuff that kind of regularly breaks down in homes here, right? So if that's what your mission is, right, then your vision has to be something much loftier, right? Your vision has to be something like, we want to make sure that living at home is so comfortable. We want to make sure that every customer of ours never realizes that they have a problem at home, right? Something like that, right? That, remember why, when people go home, they want to make sure that they're comfortable. They don't want to think about problems. They don't want to think about fixing something. They want to just chill. They want to be with their family. They want to eat. They want to watch TV, right? So you need to make sure that your vision is encapsulating what those customer needs are, right? We want to give, we want to make sure that every Indian living in India is living comfortably, right? It could just be something like that, right? And your mission is, we provide solutions that seamlessly fix your home, right? So that people know that it's really about those core problems at home that you guys are fixing and that you're providing a solution to.
Okay, great. I hope Nora gets an answer. If you have any follow-up question, you can speak up. Nagraj has another question. How relevant is Twitter and Facebook fans? Is there any brand positioning that you can suggest for social media? A lot of people actually take the number of fans or followers on Twitter and Facebook. So what is your suggestion on these areas?
This is really interesting. I personally, my company does not have a Facebook page because we don't see the relevance of it, okay? We have a LinkedIn page and we have a Twitter account, okay? I wouldn't, you got to think about it again. The same thing, that's core to your business is you want to make sure that you're running your business with integrity, right? And so that means that when you're in social media, you want to run it with integrity. If you're going for quantity, then you're taking away from quality, okay? If you're constantly pumping out quality social media, right, then there's a very good chance that the followers will come, okay? Don't get involved in social media with the one goal of getting followers, okay? Don't compare yourself to a Britney Spears. Don't compare yourself to a Sachin Tendulkar who've got millions and millions of followers, all right? Don't compare yourself to the biggest competitor you might have. Just think about, you have to think about very clearly what is going to be your personality online, okay? So for my company, we looked, again, like I said, we researched what are all the companies doing in social media, and then we realized we wanted to be very strategic in the way we tweeted. We wanted to give our followers very relevant, strategic thought, okay? And so that's what we tweet, okay? We don't have a lot of followers, but the followers we have seem to be very happy. We like the position that we've created in social media, and that's what we're sticking to. Now, I could go ahead and retweet 100 people a day. I could, tweet at 1,000 people a day, and they'll follow me, and I'll follow them and play that game. But then I take away what from my core principles are, right? Like what I want to give to the public, right? So I wouldn't put too much, too much emphasis on number of followers. I put a lot of emphasis on how are you going to use social media as an extension of what your brand represents. Okay, if there's a disconnect from the two, then again, there's a disconnect, and people are going to very quickly realize that.
Okay, great. Another very important, and I would say it's a personal question from my side, is from a branding perspective and an image perspective, where do you see the difference of and where do you draw the line between free and paid service? Okay, and I'm suggesting as a service. Okay, so when clients give you a call, okay, and you are supposed to answer whether you want to do something for free or paid. Okay, expectation is that you have to come up with a free kind of a thing. So what are the, let us say, maybe 2-3 things that you can tell people why it should be a paid service, or obviously as an entrepreneur you would like to suggest that you should be paid for doing certain thing, and as a customer he would look for ways in which he can cut down the cost and he'll look for free services. So where do you draw a line when you say a no, and if you can tell us maybe 2-3 ways in which you can either say no or ways in which you can handle this situation, if you have come through your personal experience.
That's a really good question. And so there's a couple, and again, this is a very strategic way of thinking about things, okay? I think that, and a lot of people disagree, some people disagree, some people agree, right? But my philosophy, and I learned this from my days in consulting, is, when I'm building a business, the one thing that you need building a business is credibility, okay? The only way you get credibility is if you actually have delivered client work, or you have, whatever it is, right? I mean, whatever the metric is for your particular industry, right? For me, it's to have actual executable case studies for some of these brands and celebrities, okay? And so for my first 2 clients, I literally gave it away because I knew that it's going to be tough to get these guys, number one, because they're the biggest celebrities in India. Number 2 is I knew that once I executed successfully with guys, not only would they come back for more, but everybody in the industry would see that and they'd come to me. And at that point, I could charge them a fee, okay, the fee that I wanted. All right, so that was my strategy. I always call that phase 0. Phase 0 is getting your foot in the door. Once you get in the door, if you're good, then you should be able to stay in. And if you are able to develop relationships within whatever organization, you should be able to stay in and you should be able to get paid. Okay, so that's one part of it. The second part of it is, how do you, once you've kind of done a lot of free work or whatever, how do you ask for money, right? So, this again is a little tough, but you have to. It comes back to almost confidence a little bit, right? You can, if somebody calls you and say, hey, we'd like you to do this for us, or we'd like you to do this for us, say, I'd love to do that for you. My fee for this is, X dollars, and I'll deliver it in. I'll deliver it in 2 weeks. So you have to be very clear. And they say, okay, we're not interested. They'll negotiate with you. And this is kind of something else we can talk about. Sales 101, right? Sometimes to get to yes, you have to say no, right? If you say no to people, sometimes people freak out and they're like, why did this guy say no? He must be really good. And more times than other, they will come back to you. Okay. The other thing is if people, if people are constantly competing on price, then the only competition, the only kind of differentiation is price. It's margins. And if you keep on depressing those, then that leaves somebody in a good situation. Okay. So you have to, have a little confidence and say, this is how much I charge. This is why I charge it. Look at my clientele. They've been very happy with me. I'd love to do business with you. I'll do right by you and kind of see where it goes. I hope that helps. I don't know if that's clear or not, but my first step one is build qualifications, right? Build the credibility. I'm not saying give it away for free, give it away at a heavy discount, make sure you cover your costs, right? Then you have qualifications. Advertise, market those qualifications on your website, right? Blog about it or whatever, right? So people know it's there. Then step two is now you've developed your fee structure. Now hit the market with your fee structure. People will come to you. You won't believe it, but people will come to you. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, very nice. Thanks, Sid. One of the excuses that I have frequently used is by emailing rather than putting on the phone or the call. So once people get an email, they can see in black and white that there are certain things which are chargeable and certain things that are available for free. And we tell them, okay, get back to us by email so that we know what is your next step. So that's a frequent way.
And that's good. And that's a good way. I always think, in any business, any entrepreneur, doesn't matter what it is you're in the sales business, right? And money is a sensitive thing for everybody, right? And so I like to handle those things in person whenever I can, face to face, so that once they see a face to the solution, once they see a face to the service, once they see a face to the product, it's much easier for them to realize, okay, this is what I'm paying for, okay? And so, I always, you could do an email and then say schedule a meeting, or schedule a meeting, then follow up with an email. But try to confront it and present to them, hey, this is what you're getting. If you don't want this, I'll give you 3 places where you can go get it for free. They're going to screw it up, and then you can call me after to fix it, right? And that's what's going to happen.
Okay, great. One more question from our experiences of training so many entrepreneurs is, let us say if there is a non-MBA person who has not been through a formal training program of 2 years on management and principles of marketing and Kotler and 4Ps and brand management that we are talking about. As an entrepreneur, what is it that you can suggest that that person can do to learn these tips and tricks of marketing, whether it is through these programs, through the workshops, or are there any, let us say, 2-3 tips you would like to share for a non-MBA, non-sales and marketing person? What would be the, let us say, 2-3 things that they can do to learn about these things, especially before starting a venture or during the first initial phases of the venture?
Absolutely. Okay, so first of all, I did an MBA from literally a top 5 global MBA program, okay? And I'll tell you one thing, that what you learn in an MBA is textbook stuff, and it's not that relevant in the real world, okay? So don't think that because you don't have an MBA, you're in any way disadvantaged, okay? With that said, you have to be able to understand fundamentals, right? Just like this graph I have up here, this brand, vision, mission, foundation thing, right? There's certain things you have to kind of understand. You have to have an understanding of what marketing is, right? Of what PR is, of what branding is, right? Of what sales is, of what finance is, of what is accounting, right? All the different verticals that work together to create your organization, okay? There's so many, we're so lucky now that there's so many things on the web that teach these things, right? I mean, there's Khan Academy, right? Khan Academy, which is amazing. I still go to Khan Academy when I'm need to brush up on financial modeling or accounting stuff, right? There's a lot of marketing blogs. There's a lot of case studies of companies. You can probably Google Harvard case studies, and you'll probably get 100 of them online. Read through those. Learn how companies have solved their business problems. Learn the terms that they use. Learn how they, conquer challenges and introduce new markets, and kind of think about that in the context of those verticals, right? To Does it fall under sales? Does it fall under PR? Does it fall under accounting? Does it fall under, forecasting, right? And think about it in those contexts. So the first thing is, don't think that you're disadvantaged, okay? Number two is realize who you're, you gotta remember who you're speaking to, right? So if you're speaking to a VC, you're speaking to a banker, you're speaking to a consultant, they like jargon. They like using the terms that you learn in textbooks. So be prepared for that. You're speaking to another entrepreneur who's in the mobile app space, who's a designer, you're speaking on a different level. So it's almost like be prepared for who your audience is, okay? And that's what I'd suggest.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot. We have more and more questions flowing now. One of the question that is
no
from
problem.
Yes, so we'll take up a couple of them since we have about another 4 minutes left for the session. If it is it a wrong practice, one of the question from Sagar, to that considering the competition scenario, a company adds more services to their existing profile. Here we assume they also build their profile before adapting the new one. So is it a wrong practice to add more and more service to the existing profile given that it's a competitive scenario?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely wrong. Look, if you're making decisions based on your competition solely, stop your business right now, okay? Because then you've gotten away from what you've started. You've gotten away from what your brand should represent. Now you're suddenly reacting to somebody else's brand and you're following what their brand represents, okay? It's back to what I said about the fundamentals, okay? I'm in this kind of brand, brand extension business here, right? I work with all the talent management companies in India, right? And they add, they do 100 different things, and I'm like, wow, I could do that. I could do that. Wow, why am I not? And then I realized, wait a minute, I'm not even in talent management. Why would I think about that, right? I am in a very specific type of market that nobody else is in, and I can do this better than anybody else. Listen, if you are in, I think you said you're an image consulting, right? Now, if you're an image consultant, your goal should be the best image consultant possible. It's not about the 100 services you offer. That confuses people. Look at what Apple has. They have 4 or 5 products. They're the #1 company in the world. If they decided to do what HP did, they would be royally screwed, right? HP has 1,000 products right now, and they're in the shits, right? Look at Sony, right, and Samsung. They're all getting screwed right now, right? It's because they're all in that rat race. They're forgetting what their core business was, okay? So my advice to you, again, is stick to your core. Strengthen that so much that it runs on its own, and then you can think about, okay, now I'd like to extend into a new category because our core is so strong, our reputation is so strong, our brand equity is so strong that I can take that into a new category of business.
Okay, great. Okay, so we have time for one last question before we close. What is the right time to protect your brand? Okay, is it after you succeed that you start, or let us say from day one itself you start investing in protecting your brand? What is the right stage?
Well, can I ask a clarification? What do you mean by protecting?
Protecting means IP protection, whether through trademarks, copyrights, etc. What is the right time to do that? Is it day one, or is it after, let us say, 1, 2, 3 years, or after you get successful? What is the right time to protect your brand through IP
You should do it. You should do it as soon as possible, I think. That's a good question. But look, if you're going to incorporate, if you're going to become a private limited or a whatever the other structures are here, and you should also register your brand name, register your logo, right? It's a very, I believe, inexpensive process, and you should do it. It's not a big deal at all. Just be sure that you are going to continue on with this business, right? So, absolutely, protect your logo, protect your intellectual property, because at the end of the day, it's the most important thing. If you're in e-commerce, if you're in the mobile app space, and you're hiring developers, make sure you're having them sign something that says that whatever they work on is your property. Okay, you don't want them to ever be a rights issue in this, right? So you want to make sure that whatever intellectual property you own or you are protecting in some way, and it's not an expensive thing.
Okay, great. So Sid, thanks a lot for this very insightful session. Personally, I learned a lot from this 1 hour that I've spent online with you. And to our audience members, I would like to say thanks for joining us today. I hope you got some few tips and important insights related to your business. Please feel free to connect with us. You can check out www.nurturetalent.com, and if you have any queries for Sid, please you can follow him on Twitter. You can ask him any questions. He's a very helpful person, and I wish all of you all the best for your entrepreneurial journey. As I said, Nurture Talent aim is to generate more and more jobs across the country through you as an entrepreneur. So once you become successful, we will be there with you. So Sid, one last thing, any last message you would like to give for our audience to remember?
Sure. The one message I'd like to tell you is if you are an entrepreneur or thinking about becoming an entrepreneur, do it. Don't waste any time. Just do it. But align yourself around people who are going to motivate you and inspire you. Stop surrounding yourself around what we call dead weight, people who are going to be against your ideas or tell you they're dumb or tell you that they're not going to work. Okay, align yourself around people who are going to support you. Align yourself around people who can advise you. Follow people on Twitter. Listen to TED Talks. Stay inspired. Entrepreneurship is very tough. Year one, you'll lose half your hair. Year two, it'll start going back. Year three, you can start affording stuff again. Year four, it should be great. It's always a minimum of a 4-year journey. Don't get confused by what you see on TechCrunch or all these billion-dollar exits. It's not the reality of the situation. Plan on being in it for the long haul. Stay focused, stay inspired, and make it happen. Good luck to you guys.
Thanks a lot, Sid. I hope we'll see you on the cover of Time very soon as an entrepreneur of the year.
I'll follow you, Amit. I'll follow you.
I'll be there with you. Thanks a lot to all of our audience members. It has been a great time sharing with all of you. All the best for your entrepreneurial journey ahead. We'd like to close the session now. Good night and have a great time ahead.